Today I have discussion with Mr. Ahmed Abubakar, who is a consultant and trainer in various courses of management and leadership. Our mainly focus is going to be about strategic planning. To have strategic planning, or do we need other extra efforts to add more values for our businesses?
Thank you, Anand. It's a very excellent question now you have raised. Basically, organizations need to have a strategic, they must have rather, a strategic plan. Meaning, without having appropriate or the right strategic planning means organizations do not have visions, they do not have mission, and they don't know where they are heading. So, to have a strategic plan is very important for organization, without which actually organizations do not have the right destinations and they don't have the right means to reach to the destination they are actually planning for. When they don't have strategic planning, we mean that they are not properly carrying out their environmental scanning, they are not analyzing the necessary resources they have, they don't have properly put the visions, missions. So what we are saying is organizations are not in a proper situations. They are not in the right track to travel to the destination they are planning for.
Why do companies or organizations need to have strategic planning?
Why we need to have strategic plan is basically to have the right visions, in which we have the right missions, we clearly put our strategic priorities, we understand our limitations, we understand our weaknesses, we make, in it we make a various kind of SWOT analysis. So in that case we can properly address the needs and interests of our stakeholders. We can properly know what our end users, our customers, the public at large needs can be addressed. So when we have the right kind of strategy, we know how to monitor and we know how to evaluate and take corrective actions. So without strategic planning, it means like like a plane without a proper compass. A plane cannot start its destination without compass. So having the right compass is very important for the plane to make a flight. So that's why we need a strategic plan.
To have strategic planning, or do we need other extra efforts to add more values for our businesses?
Having strategic planning is just one component. Once you have a strategic planning, you have to implement it. If you don't implement your strategic planning, it's like a tiger on a paper. So the strategic plan should be put into a reality. Therefore, the most important and critical part of strategic planning is implementation. During implementation, it is where you really assign that resource and execute your plan.
So in strategic planning, we must carry out environmental scanning. What do you mean by that, and why do we do it?
Why we need to carry out environmental scanning? Because organizations do not operate in a vacuum. Therefore, institutions, organizations, be it a private or public, whatever kind of institutions operate in an environment where actually we have several stakeholders, we have several competitors, or we have several interests. Therefore, we have to make a clear environmental scanning. We have two kinds of environments. Some are internal, some are external. Therefore, we have to properly make a very serious scanning for our environment. If you take, for example, the external environment, we mean that the external environment for legal environment, for technology, for political rules and regulations, and the government also have different directives. All these things we have to check, and we have also competitors. We have to make sure that our external environment are very important part of our scanning in terms of external environment. That's one case. The other is we have to make internal environmental analysis, in which we have to check what kind of resources do we lack, what kind of resources do we need to really put into executions, and do we have the right persons at the right place, and do we have proper staffing or not. Therefore, we have to make SWOT analysis. We mean, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are opportunities going around, what are those traits. Unless otherwise we make the right kind of SWOT analysis, we'll be in a trouble. We have to be very proactive and make sure that those risks can be, to a certain extent, be manageable for us. That's why we make environmental scanning is very critical and very important part of our strategic planning. Therefore, without which actually we pay a lot of prices if we don't make the right kind of environmental scanning.
In this particular course, the idea of strategic thinking has been discussed. What do we mean by strategic thinking, and is there any difference between strategic thinking and strategic planning?
I think this is a very important part of strategic planning. In most cases, we give very less attention to strategic thinking. We see people make strategic planning very mechanically. We don't have very organic kind of strategic planning. In most cases, our strategic planning lacks strategic thinking. What we mean by strategic thinking first, it encompasses, it constitutes all other concepts of strategic planning, like strategic management, strategic formulation, strategic planning, strategic deployment, and so on. Strategic thinking is the whole, it's a universal set of strategic planning aspects. So it represents many things. It represents the conceptuality of what we are doing. It requires the mindful exercise of strategic planning, without which actually strategic planning or strategic management is meaningless. Therefore, we have to work on strategic thinking. When we talk about strategic planning, basically there are situations we have to manage that strategic management, in which we have the formulations, we have the planning, we have the deployment. So we have to understand the fruit of strategic thinking. Therefore, strategic planning is very critical, but without strategic thinking, strategic planning is meaningless.
Who shall be involved in the preparation of strategic planning? So once we prepared it, of course, after the approval, we directly go to the implementation. Then what shall we do in this stage?
Basically, we have to understand those people on board for strategic planning. The top management, middle management, and lower management within the organizations shall be engaged. To a certain extent, we need also employee engagement, because we need to have their feedbacks, their ideas, their suggestions, opinions, because they are the ones who are actually involved in the business of the organizations in many ways. So we have to get their feedbacks. The other is, if we have institutions in which we're operating through the board of directors are the apex, are the key stakeholders in terms of strategic directions. So we need to engage our board of directors, and then we have to apply those ideas, feedbacks we have generated from this group of management, the top management, as I said, middle management, lower management, and the employees. The other is our end users. Who are our customers? Because ultimately, our customers are the end users of our products or our services we are actually rendering. Either we are in business or in the public institutions. Therefore, we have to make sure that what our services are actually ultimately for the end users, how do really they feel or how do they really sense the services we are giving to our customers. Are they satisfied? Are they dissatisfied? Or what are their do they have some misconceptions? Are they satisfied, dissatisfied? We have to gauge, we have to evaluate the end users. Therefore, we have to find information and feedback and data from the end users and the public at large, because organizations of any kind are operating in an environment where communities and the publics are actually exist. Therefore, we have to see how really the public, the environment in which we are operating sense our business or our services. Therefore, they are very important. And also we have to see the government in terms of what kind of the directions, rules, regulations the government every time, passes, and therefore we have to get feedback from that. Therefore, we get indirectly ideas, feedback, and important information from the government side. So that will help us in terms of getting information and data from those institutions who are actually involved, especially in our businesses or in our situation, because we have to understand their interest as well.
So in strategic planning, it's important to understand our stakeholders. Why is it important to do that?
Yeah, it's very important to understand our stakeholders' interest. Without understanding the interest of our stakeholders, it's very difficult to identify the degree of their influence in our planning effort, and also to address the requirements that are relevant to strategic planning. Is to know the true needs and expectations. What really do they expect? Do they have any expectation? What is the real expectations as stakeholders? And to also articulate the criteria for decision making. We set up criteria in order to articulate their interest, and also to properly design the journey in execution of our strategy, because what we are going to face, some are influencing positively, some are influencing negatively. So we will properly set or design the journey in which we execute our strategy, and to keep sustainability of the intended visions and mission. Our vision and mission can be sustainable if and only if we properly actually have a very sustainable stakeholders analysis. That's very important. For example, stakeholders have different stakes in our strategy. All do not have the same kind of expectations. They have different expectations. Therefore, clear understanding of both internal and external stakeholders' stakes assist our planning and execution journey. Therefore, it's very important to understand our stakeholders. In that case, we have to make or carry out the analysis. We have to properly set up the frameworks of stakeholders. We have to understand who are the internal, who are the external, and we have to clearly put all these things into analysis during our strategic planning and execution as well.